So friends, I hope you are all doing well. As you know that recently December 24 CMA final exams are already over, but this is the perfect time to analyze and learn from them. That's why I have started a post answer writing practice series for the corporate and economic law subject. And in this series, I am focusing on how we should have written the answers to the questions asked in the examination. And the goal is to help you understand the correct way to frame your answers so that next time you can write confidently and score higher marks. So far, I have uploaded videos for questions up to question number 3 on my YouTube channel. If you have not seen them yet, make sure to check them out. And these videos are detailed and will guide you step by step on how to write answers that are accurate, well structured, and error free. Right. And next, we will continue with question number 4. So stay connected. And this practice is not just for exams. Remember, this practice is not just for exams, but also to build confidence and speed while writing. Right, and the idea is to make sure that we are fully given our best for any question and attempt it without confusion or mistakes. And if you are someone who feels nervous about writing long answers or structuring them correctly, then these videos are for you. So together let's learn, improve, and become better version at writing answers that impress the examiners, right? And now, without wasting any more time, let's start with question number 4 and see how to write answers in the best way possible, right? So let's start with question number 4a. Question number 4a, right? So question number 4 क्या है? See, ये जो question number 4a है, question number 4 is all about IBC, right? So under section 28 of the IBC 2016, the resolution professional will have to take prior approval for some cases, otherwise it will be invalid. So what are those cases and what percentage of voting is required in favor of the decision? So what percentage of voting, ये तो हमको पता है 66%, right? And इसके ऊपर MCQ भी एक आया था, right? तो again क्वेश्चन लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन टाइप भी क्वेश्चन आया है, तो ये क्वेश्चन भी इजीली हम राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस करके प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं इस क्वेश्चन का आंसर, राइट? तो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद क्वेश्चन नंबर 4a, राइट? सो as we know that under section 28 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, the resolution professional must seek prior approval from the Committee of Creditors, which is called COC. Committee of Creditors, which is called COC, for certain decisions, right? And these decisions requires the approval of at least 66% of the voting share of the COC. And the decisions that require prior approval from the COC are जैसे कि sale of the corporate debtor, change in the constitution of the corporate debtor, approval of the resolution plan, raising of interim finance, withdrawal of insolvency application, relinquishment of a claim or any right, right? तो ये सारे जो decisions है that require prior approval from the COC, right? So let's write the answer to question number 4a. You can write that first, under section 28 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which is called IBC 2016. आपका जो हैंड राइटिंग है वो बहुत क्लैरिटी होना चाहिए. The resolution professional, which is called RP, must seek prior approval from the Committee of Creditors, which is called COC, for certain decisions, right? And these decisions require the approval of at least 66% of the voting share share of the COC, राइट। तो 66% वोटिंग शेयर का रिक्वायरमेंट होता है डिसीजन लेने के लिए, राइट। सो you can write that under section 28 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, the resolution professional must seek prior approval from the Committee of Creditors, which is called COC, for certain decisions, and these decisions require the approval of at least 66% of the voting share of the COC. Now you can write that the decisions that require prior approval from the COC under section 28 are, you can write key points, जैसे कि फर्स्ट नंबर 1 आएगा सेल ऑफ द कॉर्पोरेट डेप्टर, सेल ऑफ द कॉर्पोरेट डेप्टर। अगर आप सिर्फ की वर्ड भी लिख दोगे तो भी मार्क मिलेगा, बट इफ यू वांट टू एक्सप्लेन देन यू कैन एक्सप्लेन इन 2 लाइन्स। फर्स्ट आई हैव टू मेंशन द की पॉइंट्स, सेल ऑफ द कॉर्पोरेट डेप्टर, देन यू कैन राइट चेंज इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द कॉर्पोरेट डेप्टर, चेंज इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन of the corporate debtor, right? Then third, approval of the resolution plan. Then 4, raising of interim finance, raising of interim finance, then withdrawal of the insolvency application, withdrawal of insolvency application, then relinquishment of a claim or any right, इतना ही, right? इतना ही। The decisions that require prior approval from the COC under section 28 are sale of the corporate debtor, change in the constitution of the corporate debtor, approval of the resolution plan, raising of interim finance, then withdrawal of insolvency application, and relinquishment of a claim or any right. Relinquishment of a claim or any right. Right. So, sale of the corporate debtor means selling the entire assets of the corporate debtor, selling the entire assets of the corporate debtor, or a substantial portion of its asset outside the ordinary course of business. Right. And change in the constitution of the corporate debtor means if there is a change in the management or control of the corporate debtor during the resolution process. And approval of the resolution plan means the RP must ensure that the resolution plan conforms with all the legal requirements and any change or deviation in the process need approval. Then raising of interim finance means in certain cases the resolution professional may need COC approval for raising interim finance during the insolvency resolution process, right? Raising of interim finance के केस में, certain cases में, the resolution professional may need COC approval for raising interim finance during the insolvency resolution process. And then withdrawal of insolvency application. Withdrawal of insolvency application means if the RP wish to withdraw an insolvency application, then it needs the COC approval, right? COC का approval requirement होता है. Then relinquishment of a claim or any right. If there is a relinquishment of any claim or legal right that could affect the insolvency proceedings, in that case, the decision required prior approval from the COC under section 28, right? So these key points you need to remember. These key points you need to remember. Again, sale of the corporate debtor, change in the constitution of the corporate debtor, approval of the resolution plan, raising of interim finance, then withdrawal of insolvency application, and relinquishment of a claim or any right. Right. So in these cases, the decisions require prior approval from the COC under section 28. Now last को you can write that voting requirement जो है, voting requirement जो कि हमको अच्छे से पता है, जो 66% वाला जो केस है, राइट. तो यू कैन राइट दैट a decision will be valid only if it receives the approval of at least how much? 66% of the voting shares of the committee of creditors, right? Committee of the creditors. बस इतना लिखने से आपको 7 मार्क्स, फुल टू फुल 7 मार्क्स मिल जाएगा. आपको पहले लिखना है सेक्शन 28 के अकॉर्डिंग क्या है. अंडर सेक्शन 28 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code IBC 2016, the resolution professional must seek prior approval from the Committee of Creditors, which is called COC, for certain decisions. These decisions require the approval of at least 66% of the voting share of the COC, and the decisions that require prior approval from the COC under section 28 are as follows. जैसे कि sale of the corporate debtor, change in the constitution of the corporate debtor, approval of the resolution plan, raising of interim finance, then withdrawal of insolvency application, relinquishment of a claim or any right. And last को आप लिख सकते हैं voting requirement क्या है. A decision will be valid only if it receives the approval at least 66% of the voting shares of the committee of the creditors, right? तो इतना ही 7 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन है. तो इतना ही लिखने से आपको पूरे अच्छे से 7 to 7 मार्क्स मिल जाएगा. नाउ मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन ऑफ क्वेश्चन नंबर 4, दैट इज व्हाट इज मीन्ड बाय कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस. What is meant by corporate governance, and how are the listed entities required to submit periodic report on corporate governance to the stock exchange, and what are the areas to be covered in such reports? Right, very good question. तो कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के बारे में हमको तो अच्छे से पता है. कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस क्या है? सी, कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस refers to the systems, principles and process by which companies are directed and controlled. Right? Corporate governance refers to the system, principles and process by which companies are directed and controlled. It involves the relationships between the company's management, board of directors, shareholders and other stakeholders. And the goal of corporate governance is to ensure transparency, accountability, fairness and the efficient management of the company's resources while balancing the interest of various stakeholders. राइट, ये है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का मीनिंग. तो कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का मीनिंग को पूरे अच्छे से लिखना है. चाहे 3 to 4 टाइम्स आप बार बार प्रैक्टिस भी कर सकते हैं कि आप कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का मीनिंग को, क्योंकि कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के ऊपर हमेशा क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आता है. राइट, एंड की प्रिंसिपल्स क्या है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के अंदर? फर्स्ट, अकाउंटेबिलिटी, ट्रांसपेरेंसी होना चाहिए, फेयरनेस होना चाहिए, रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होना चाहिए. ट्रांसपेरेंसी, अकाउंटेबिलिटी, फेयरनेस, रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. अकाउंटेबिलिटी, ट्रांसपेरेंसी, फेयरनेस, रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. Accountability, transparency, fairness and responsibility. Right, these are the principles of corporate governance. And ये जो लिखा गया है, submit periodic report on corporate governance to the stock exchange and what are the areas to be covered in such report. Right, so as you know that listed companies are required to submit periodic corporate governance report to the stock exchange under the Security and Exchange Board of India, which is called SEBI, and this is mainly governed by SEBI's listing obligations and disclosure requirement. SEBI's listing obligations and disclosure requirement, which is called LODR Regulation 2015. LODR Regulations 2015, which mandate listed entities to regularly disclose their corporate governance practices. रेगुलरली डिस्क्लोज देयर कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस प्रैक्टिसेस, राइट. तो जो रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट है, रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट मीन्स लिस्टेड कंपनीज मस्ट सबमिट क्वार्टरली and annual corporate governance report, typically in quarterly report format submitted within 15 days from the end of each quarter, and annual report submitted at the annual financial results filing, right. And what are the key areas to cover in corporate governance report? First, board of director का, right. Board of director के अंदर क्या क्या जाएगा? Composition of the board, including the number of independent directors, category of directors. Category of directors means executive, non-executive, independent, etc. And number of board meetings, कितना board meetings हुआ है held during the quarter or year, and details of the attendance of each director at meetings. And then audit committee. Audit committee क्या है? Composition and meeting of the audit committee, a report on the function performed by the audit committee during the reporting period. And then और एक key areas है जैसे कि nomination and remuneration committee, right. Then stakeholders relationship committee, risk management, disclosure of related party transactions, declaration on code of conduct, corporate social responsibility, ये भी एक important aspect की areas है, and general meetings, right, shareholding patterns, and compliance with SEBI and legal requirements. SEBI and legal requirements, right. So these are the key areas which are need to be covered in corporate governance report, right. So let's write answer writing for question number 4B. Question number 4B. Question number 4B, right. So first, corporate governance. Meaning of corporate governance. तो क्या है meaning? You can write corporate governance refers to the systems, principles, and processes by which companies are directed and controlled. Directed and controlled, right. And it involves the relationships between the company's management, board of directors, shareholders, and other stakeholders, right. Then you can write that the goal of corporate governance is to ensure transparency, accountability, fairness, and the efficient management of the company's resources, while balancing the interest of various stakeholders, right. ये है corporate governance का meaning. Corporate governance refers to the systems, principles, and processes by which companies are directed and controlled. It involves the relationships between the company's management, board of directors, shareholders, and other stakeholders. And the goal of corporate governance is to ensure transparency होना चाहिए, accountability होना चाहिए, fairness होना चाहिए, and the efficient management of the company's resources while balancing the interest of various stakeholders. Then you can write that submission of periodic corporate governance report by listed entities. Submission of periodic corporate governance reports by listed entities. Report by listed entities. Right. तो लिखना है listed companies are required to submit periodic corporate governance reports to the stock exchange under the SEBI regulations, right? And this is mainly governed by SEBI's listing obligation, governed by SEBI's listing obligations and disclosure requirement which is called LODR regulations 2015, which mandates listed entities to regularly disclose their corporate governance practices, right? And reporting requirement क्या है? Reporting requirements क्या है? See, you can write that listed companies must submit quarterly and annual corporate governance reports typically in the following formats. क्या क्या following formats? First, quarterly report right, which is submitted within 15 days from the end of each quarter, and then annual report और ये जो annual report है, annual report submitted होता है at the end या फिर at the time of annual financial results filing, right? quarterly report submitted within 15 days from the end of each quarter, and annual report जो है it submitted at the time of annual filing results, right? Annual financial results filing. And now key areas to be covered in corporate governance reports. Key areas to be covered in corporate governance report, right? क्या क्या key areas है? First, you can write board of directors, right? And board of directors के अंदर सब कुछ आएगा, जैसे कि composition of the board, including the number of independent directors, कैटेगरी ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स, कैटेगरी के अंदर एग्जीक्यूटिव आता है, नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव आता है, इंडिपेंडेंट आता है, राइट? एंड नंबर ऑफ बोर्ड मीटिंग्स हेल्ड ड्यूरिंग द क्वार्टर और ईयर, डिटेल्स ऑफ द अटेंडेंस ऑफ ईच डायरेक्टर एट मीटिंग्स. देन और क्या क्या की एरियाज है? ऑडिट कमिटी, राइट? एंड ऑडिट कमिटी के अंदर आता है कंपोजिशन एंड मीटिंग्स ऑफ द ऑडिट कमिटी, a report on the functions performed by the audit committee during the reporting period, right? And then third key areas, nomination and remuneration committee, Then four key areas are stakeholders relationship with committee. You can write that stakeholders relationship committee, and then risk management, और एक की एरियाज है डिस्क्लोजर ऑफ रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजेक्शंस, डिस्क्लोजर ऑफ रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस. अब ये जो डिस्क्लोजर ऑफ रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस है, इसके अंदर आता है ए रिपोर्ट ऑन रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस एंड दे आर कॉम्प्लियंस विद रेगुलेटरी स्टैंडर्ड्स, देन और भी कुछ की एरियाज हैं, जैसे कि डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट, एंड देन कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, जो कि सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है, कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, इन शॉर्ट CSR, एंड जनरल मीटिंग्स, राइट? अब जनरल मीटिंग्स जो जैसे कि इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द एनुअल जनरल मीटिंग विच इज कॉल्ड AGM, एंड इंक्लूडिंग द डेट, वेन्यू एंड रिजोल्यूशन पास्ट, ये सब जनरल मीटिंग्स के अंदर आता है. तो दीज आर द की एरियाज, राइट? और भी कुछ है, यू कैन राइट दैट शेयर होल्डिंग पैटर्न. अब ये जो शेयर होल्डिंग पैटर्न है, शेयर होल्डिंग पैटर्न के अंदर आता है शेयर होल्डिंग का स्ट्रक्चर एंड इंक्लूडिंग शेयर होल्डिंग डिटेल्स, राइट? तो दीज आर द शेयर होल्डिंग पैटर्न, दीज आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बी एडेड एज ए की एरियाज. देन और एक है compliance with SEBI and legal requirement, compliance with SEBI and legal requirements means confirmation of adherence to SEBI's regulation and other legal provisions relevant to corporate governance, right? So these are the key areas to be covered in corporate governance report. एक तो board report, board of directors, then audit committee, then nomination and remuneration committee, then shareholders relationship committee, risk management, disclosure of related party transactions, declaration of code of conduct, corporate social responsibility, general meetings, shareholding patterns, and compliance with SEBI and legal requirements, right? तो ये सब पॉइंट है, ये सब पॉइंट है. तो इसमें आपको सिर्फ 7 पॉइंट सी लिखना है. नो नीड टू राइट ऑल द की एरियाज, यू जस्ट नीड टू राइट अप टू 7 की एरियाज इफ यू नो, राइट. देन यू कैन प्रेजेंट दिस क्वेश्चन का, ये जो क्वेश्चन का आंसर इसको ऐसे प्रेजेंट करना है, सो दैट यू विल एबल टू सिक्योर फुल टू फुल 7 मार्क्स. आपको पहले मीनिंग लिखना है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का. क्वेश्चन के अंदर दिया गया है व्हाट इज मीन्ड बाय कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस. तो कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस रेफर्स टू द सिस्टम्स, प्रिंसिपल्स एंड प्रोसेस बाय व्हिच कंपनीज आर डायरेक्टेड एंड कंट्रोल्ड. कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस एक ऐसा सिस्टम है, प्रिंसिपल्स है, प्रोसेस है जिसको कंपनीज को जो कि कंपनी को डायरेक्ट करता है, कंट्रोल करता है. एंड इट इन्वॉल्व्स द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन द कंपनीज मैनेजमेंट, बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स, शेयर होल्डर्स एंड अदर स्टेक होल्डर्स. And the goal of corporate governance is to ensure transparency, accountability, fairness, and the efficient management of the company's resources, which balancing the interest of various stakeholders. Right? ये हो गया meaning of corporate governance. Then you can write submission of periodic corporate governance report by listed entities. Listed companies are required to submit periodic corporate governance reports to the stock exchange under the SEBI regulation. This is mainly governed by SEBI's listed obligations and disclosure requirement, which is called LODR regulations 2015, which mandates listed entities to regularly disclose their corporate governance practices, right? And reporting requirement क्या है? Listed companies must submit quarterly and annual corporate governance reports, typically in the following format. One is quarterly report and second one annual report. Then you can write what are the key areas to be covered in corporate governance. First one will be board of director, then audit committee, third nomination and remuneration committee, fourth stakeholders relationship committee, 5 risk management, 6 disclosure of related party transactions, 7 disclosure of code of conduct, 8 corporate social responsibility, 9 general meetings, 10 shareholding pattern, 11 compliance with SEBI and legal requirement. राइट, तो इतना ही आपको लिखना है एग्नेस्ट क्वेश्चन नंबर 4 का बी. राइट, तो ऐसे ही क्वेश्चन नंबर 4 एंड 4 का ए एंड बी का आंसर राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस करना है, ऐसे ही प्रेजेंट करना है आंसर को एग्जाम में. राइट, सो दैट यू विल एबल टू सिक्योर फुल टू फुल 7 to 7 मार्क्स. राइट, सो दिस इज इट ऑल अबाउट माई साइड. थैंक यू सो मच for your support. Thank you so much for your patience and happy studying.